but I suppose I can start without him. Um, so, like I'm sure most of you know, the point of this is to get you familiar with flight training opportunities, scholarships in and outside of CAP. So before we get going too much, I'd like to go through each of you guys that are attending and just get a really quick introduction from you guys. Your name, where you're from, what your aviation goals are, and if you have any flight experience. If not, no big deal. You're not required to have any to be here, but let me know if you got any. And then a quick summary of your aviation goals. Try to keep it brief since there are quite a few of you. But let's, Colonel Wiggs, is there a way you can call off people real quick and go in a nice order?
Okay, hang on, let me re-engage.
No problem.
All right, we heard from me, we've heard from you. Just going in order of my participant list, Major Gorham.
All right, I'm Cadet Major Gorham from the Tri-Cities Composite Squadron. Aviation goals, I want to maybe get more into the glider flight side of Civil Air Patrol, and I've done several of the glider and powered orientation flights within CAP, but not much more flight experience outside.
Thank you. Major Sholey.
Good morning, everybody. I am Cadet Major Julia Sholey. I'm from the Renton Composite Squadron. And my long-term goals are to commission into the Air Force as a pilot. And then my short-term goals are to get my private pilot's license, hopefully soon, and then work on flight training.
Very good. Cadet Second Lieutenant Jessiano.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cadet Second Lieutenant Jance Giussiano from the Tri-Cities Composite Squadron. My long-term goals within aviation is to eventually get my pilot's license, well, within Civil Air Patrol as my long-term goal. My short-term goal within Civil Air Patrol is to finish all my orientation slides. And then my career long-term aviation goal is to eventually get my pilot's position as an air.
All right. Cadet, my screen keeps jumping around here. Second Lieutenant Druffner.
Hello, everyone. I am Cadet Second Lieutenant Katarina Druffner. I am from the Overlay Composite Squadron in Washington. In terms of aviation goals, I plan to attend a National Flight Academy and eventually get my solo wings, but currently I don't have too much experience in flight.
Thank you. Cadet Second Lieutenant Blanchard.
Good morning. I'm Cadet Second Lieutenant Blanchard from Fort Vancouver Composite Squadron, Southwest Washington. My aviation goals are to, in the nearby future, get my sport pilot's license and my private pilot's license, and then try to commission through USAFA and get a pilot slot. And then from my experience, I have a lot of flights in light sport aircraft, and then I soloed at Deagle for basic glider.
All right. Sorry, I had to admit someone and then it jumped around. Cadet Captain McCall.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is Cadet Captain Kaden McCall. I'm from McMinnville Composite Squadron in Oregon Wing. My goals for aviation, at least for this seminar, like I really just want to learn, see what you guys all have to say. I don't have some very specific goals, but I know that I'm really interested in the field going forward. And I want to take this information, take it back to my cadets, because I know a lot of them are. So far, I've done one O-ride through CAP. Yeah, so I'm just looking to learn. Thanks.
Excellent. Cadet Captain Ferreira.
Hi, my name is Cadet Captain Ferreira. I'm from Renton Composite Squadron in Washington. For prior experience, I've been to Deagle 2 times for basic and advanced glider. I'm hoping that I can maybe earn a cadet wing scholarship so I can start on flight training. Also, I've taken the FAA test and passed it.
Nice. I remember you on the flight line. Cadet Captain Bailey.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Cadet Captain Bailey from Oregon Wing, Height as a Composite Squadron. I don't really have any specific goals in aviation. I've been on 2 O rides. I just want to gain some more knowledge and learn more about the field.
Very good. Cadet Chief Master Sergeant Ross.
Hello, my name is Cadet Chief Master Sergeant Ross. I'm from the Morristown Composite Squadron in Tennessee. Short-term goals is finish out the last 2 O rides I have left in CAP and a 10-day flight academy. Long-term is get an Air Force ROTC scholarship to Colorado Boulder and get into pilot school from there.
Very good. Thank you. Let's see. Cadet Senior Master Sergeant Kinstall.
Good morning. I'm Cadet Senior Master Sergeant Rebecca Kinsel. One of my aviation goals is to get a private pilot's license, and the only experience I have right now is attending a ground school program.
Very good. Colonel Maxwell.
I'm Kathy Maxwell, work at Desert Eagle Flight Academy. And I just totally approve, just looking for all the information I can get from this seminar.
Very good. Major Crozier and company.
Yeah, I'm John Crozier. I'm the squadron commander at the Tri-Cities Composite Squadron here in Richland, Washington. I just became the squadron commander last January, and I'm an emergency physician. Therefore, I'm also the health services officer and served as such at the Mountain Eagle encampment in Idaho last summer. The summer before this last one, excuse me. I actually grew up here in Washington. I grew up in Spokane, so I'm an Eastern Washington guy. As far as my goals right now, just trying to improve our squadron and trying to get the cadets on through as high as the level that they can achieve. My past flight experience, I actually was going for my pilot's license years and years ago in college, but my there was a little issue where that was sidetracked, and so I was never able to get involved with that again. But at any rate, glad to be here. I'm mainly here so I can see what the cadets are up to and get more familiar with some of these cadet programs. And then I also have my son here, who's a cadet.
Hello, I am Senior Master Sergeant Jay Crozier. I am from the Richland Composite Squadron. One of my goals is to get the Mitchell Award and attend an encampment. My flight experience is I've been in the glider, O ride, and
Okay. All right. My apologies to everyone. My attendance list keeps jumping all over. Who have I missed? I've gotten everyone?
Do we have Kirsch or Larson on?
I have not seen them.
I believe you have covered everybody, sir.
Okay. So do we have either of the Carpenters on? Nope. Okay. Colonel Soma, that leaves you. And then I turn it back over to you and Colonel Desmoni.
Great. Yeah, thank you for going through that, sir, especially with no notice. But yeah, we'll get started with our introductions to our flight experience and just a little bit more in depth than what you guys gave. But it sounds like you guys have pretty wide range of experiences. That's good. Hopefully we'll have something, at least a little bit of something for everyone.
Hello. Oh, there you go.
How's
All
it
right,
going? if you have any questions while we're giving our presentation, go ahead and just type them in the chat and we'll get to them as we come to them. But at the end of each section, we'll ask for questions, in which case feel free to just unmute yourself and just ask them verbally. Yeah, that should work. I know there's a hand raising thing, but typing your comments should work for now. All right, so we'll get started. I'll have Lieutenant Colonel Soma introduce himself and talk about his flight experience, and then we'll get going.
Sweet, thank you. The school internet just went out and the power just crashed, so that's why I left temporarily. So if I disappear again, that's probably why, but I think everything's working now. But just as a basic introduction, first off, with my position and kind of what my job that helps me teach this class this morning is I'm the Washington Wing Cadet Flight Training Committee Chair, and actually Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Marco Desimoni is in the Washington Wing Cadet Operations Officer. So he's kind of my deputy and helping me with this position while also managing his. So kind of going back and forth with this. But I joined CAP about 5 years ago because I wanted to fly and I saw the uniforms look pretty cool. So that's what originally got my interest sparked. But from there, just kept going. So I learned about Desert Eagle Flight Academy, which kind of goes into my flight experience. So I came from Bellingham, and originally it was a good squadron where I could learn a lot. And so I got interested in Desert Eagle, had some mentorship on how to apply. And then I've attended there for the last 4 years. So it's usually a 3-year program, but I went as a basic glider student and advanced glider student for 2 years, doing that to get more hours and ensure that I could get my private pilot glider license, which I still haven't gotten, but we're going to work towards that after I get my private pilot license. And then when I went as a power student, overall getting about 25 plus hours of flight time, which was a good thing to get, and also helped a lot with my interests. And I had a lot of mentorship that kind of helped me get to where I am now. So I'm currently an Air Force ROTC at the University of Portland, and I'm working towards getting a rated pilot slot. But again, I'm at this school actually because of someone at Desert Eagle recommended it, and I'm meeting people here that I met at Desert Eagle. So going to Desert Eagle or going to a flight academy in general not only helps you with your application, not only get an idea of where you want to go with your life in aviation or school, but it just helps you prepare in general for anything that you might be working towards, because there's a lot of great people there who have a lot of knowledge in several different areas. And then currently, I have a cadet wing scholarship, so I'm flying out of Pearson Airfield right in Vancouver, Washington. So just a hop, skip over the river. And I'm working on getting my private pilot license there. So should be starting some solos next couple weeks, doing a lot of that stuff. So it's a cool opportunity, and definitely it's amazing the scholarships that Civil Air Patrol has and that you can find anywhere. So that's my introduction. Colonel Desimoni.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so I started out quite a bit differently than Colonel Soma. I did not go to Desert Eagle as a student. I went as staff for a couple of years. But overall in CAP, I joined, it's about 6.5 years ago now. It's a little bit longer than Colonel Soma, but he caught up to me in rank. But with flight training, I did it privately outside of CAP. I started at one school, moved to a different one that tended to work for me better, and we'll talk more about that later. But currently, I have my private pilot license and instrument rating. I'm about to get my commercial license and also working on a float plane add-on, which is just a kind of fun little add-on there. But currently I have about 300 hours. And right now I'm in Texas, actually, studying aviation maintenance at the Turner University. This is my senior year. So after this, I will be, if all goes to plan, I'll be commissioning in the Air Force as a pilot. I'm in the application process of that right now through OTS. So hopefully that'll work out. If all goes to plan, as like I said, hopefully we F-15s or a similar fighter. But if not, any Air Force plane is pretty cool to fly. Looks like Colonel Soma is back. Okay, but that's kind of.
I just lost power, so I'm going to be using my phone from now on, just so everyone knows. We're gonna go with that.
Okay, awesome. We're gonna be agile. Okay, so that's a summary of my flight experience. Like I said, didn't go to Desert Eagle, did it separately. I did get quite a few scholarships. We'll talk about that later. Colonel Soma, you want to talk about Desert Eagle and some of the NCSAs?
Yes, let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so just in case anyone didn't hear, my power just went out, so there's not for much to see, so I'm just gonna keep my camera off for the remainder of this, but hope that doesn't interfere with anything. So I have a lot of experience with attending Desert Eagle. I grew a lot there, but some of the pros of going to Desert Eagle versus some other academies is, one, if you're a local Washington or Oregon cadet, it's super close, and they do have a certain amount of pilot slots for Washington and Oregon cadets. And as it continues to grow, it's possibly going to become a national cadet special activity. Hasn't been quite confirmed yet, but that means that the prices are only going to go down. It's going to be easier and cheaper for all of you to go. But Desert Eagle, in and of itself, it's a very tight-knit community where the people working there have been working together for several years. Or if they're new, they get caught up, and they really help you go from ground zero to where you need to be to solo. And that's not what a lot of flight academies do. It's something unique that Desert Eagle does, because most flight schools you'll go, and possibly if you go for glider, for example, you usually won't solo your first year. But Desert Eagle on your basic glider year will usually help get you to solo. It's not guaranteed, but usually they do. So if you're looking to solo just to get that experience, then Desert Eagle has some unique opportunities for that. And also the network that's created, it not only helps you prepare for the training you're going to get there to solo, but they also give you a lot of tools to moving forward. So for example, they have the ground school at the end of Desert Eagle and during it for some of the powered students. But that will take you from having maybe a little bit of knowledge about some regulations and airspace and things that you'll need to know for flying, to becoming pretty knowledgeable in a lot of areas in just a time span of 3 days. So this is after the whole flight school's over. The training continues, and you can actually get your FAA written completed, which lasts for about 2 years, I'm pretty sure. And that is one step in getting your license. So having that available at the flight school is very useful, because it gets another thing checked off your list. So that's a little bit about Desert Eagle. There's a lot of unique opportunities. It's a lot of fun. You get to go to the pool about halfway the week, and in the middle of summer, the pool is very refreshing, very fun. And then there's just a lot of great people. You sleep with the people you're flying with. You're going to study with them. You're going to eat with them, and you really just become a lot of good friends. And you can continue that relationship onward. A lot of my friends I've met there, a lot of them are at Air Force Academy and at ROTC. So you definitely create a very unique network. And then there are a lot of other NCSAs. Currently, to my knowledge, a lot of them aren't posted at the moment because of COVID. They're going to be posting them after December, just with the updates for everything, because the future is unknown at this point. So there are several flight NCSAs for flight, and you basically can go on to Civil Air Patrol's website, go under NCSAs, and they should all be listed there. When I went there was about 2 listed, and I believe they're for online segments that may be being held in February. Not 100% sure, but definitely go there and look for these flight academies that you're interested in, and do research, read what they're about, contact some people who may have been gone, use your resources in your squadron, use your squadron commander, your fellow cadets, and really figure out what they think will be most beneficial to you. But a lot of flight schools in the nation here are very solid. So don't be afraid to apply for those, but definitely keep an eye out for after December when those start coming up, if they're going to be a thing, but start looking at those. Colonel Desmoy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just like you said, Desert Eagle's the closest for most of us. I know there's some across the country on this call, but definitely apply to all of them. Any that you are interested or could go to. There's always scholarships available for transportation and the event itself. So definitely apply to more than just one, just in case one fills up before you get a slot. You have chances at others. There's no penalty for applying, so never be afraid to apply. That'd be my advice for that. And like you said, they're not available to look at right now, but keep that in mind to look at when they do come out, hopefully sometime next month or after the new year.
Sweet. Okay, so with that, are there any questions first on either Desert Eagle or the NTS, or about NTSAs?
What are some common national flight academies that you might recommend?
So I have personally never been to a national flight academy. Let me see. Colonel Desmoy, do you have anything on this? Because I have not heard any recommendations on any, but I've heard that all around they're all pretty similar because they all follow about roughly the same syllabus. Colonel Maxwell, even if you have anything to add to this, but
there we go. Sorry, having trouble with the mute button. Yeah, like you said, I don't have any personal experience with any others outside of Desert Eagle. I haven't heard anything negative about any of the flight academies on the national level, so I definitely wouldn't shy away from applying. I think most of us on this call are partial to Desert Eagle, so we'd probably say definitely apply to that one. But outside of Desert Eagle, I can't really give a recommendation.
So we have been talking to National this week, and we will be putting Desert Eagle in as a National Flight Academy. Again, it is so unknown, but we will go ahead we will do our normal National Flight Academy application process. If we have to, we might split glider and power later on during the summer, but we'll find that out later. I also just wanted to say a good place to check on other flight academies is on the Smug Mug pictures under the cadet activities page. That's where I've seen all the other different flight academies, and you can see, you kind of judge what they're doing by the pictures that they have there.
Okay, thank you.
That's great advice. Thank you, Colonel Maxwell. All right. So with that, is there any other questions before we move on, actually? All right, again, feel free to type them in the chat if you think of a question while we're presenting and don't want to forget it. And we'll come to it as soon as we can. If that is that for our NCSAs, we can move on to scholarships. Colonel Soma, do you want to start with your scholarships?
Will do. All right. Colonel Desmond, for this, would you mind sharing your screen? And as the perfect example, I'll walk you through the application, much like anyone who isn't a member would see. So would you mind sharing your screen for this?
1 second.
Looks like my internet is coming back on. So let me try pulling that up again.
All right. Yes, I can share my screen as soon as I figure out how to click the right one. There we go. Okay.
All right, thank you. So with flight scholarships specifically, what we're gonna talk about first is the EAA. So the EAA has a number of scholarships. For all of this, if you all want to take notes, I'd highly recommend it because we got some important due dates and ways to apply for these. So the EAA has quite a few, and their scholarships are pretty unique because they're usually at least around $5,000, which can take up at least you'd be used for at least half of your flight training. So it's super useful there. And if you apply for multiple, you get multiple of those. So it just keeps adding up. So it's a super good scholarship, but to be noted, there are a lot of people who apply for it. It's pretty popular. So on these dates that I'm going to give you, you're probably going to want to apply for as soon as possible when these due dates open. to make sure you're as competitive as possible for the things you want. So if you go to EAA scholarships, you can type it in your search bar. Just type in EAA scholarships. So it'll bring it right up. So let that happen.
Helps if you spell it properly. There we go. Okay. Sweet. And then let me see. Is my I'm gonna try this one more time. Is my computer working? Let's see. Can everyone hear me? All right. All right. Looks like my internet connection is still unstable. So I'm just gonna watch the screen from my computer now. So you're gonna want to click on apply now. And while that's happening, just some side notes for everyone. The important due dates that you're going to want to remember is that the EAA scholarships are open from September 1st to November 1st. So unfortunately, that this term of the scholarships just closed. So they're available from September 1st to November 1st. And then they're going to be open again from March 1st to June 1st. And when the scholarships open from March to June, you're going to be able to use the scholarship from July to December of that same year. So keep that in mind. And you can still wait till next year, I guess, to apply for September to November. But I'd recommend applying for the March to June scholarship because typically you'll get some pretty good weather towards the end of the year with the great views and everything. And it might not be the ideal weather, but I'd recommend applying for these as soon as long. Don't wait till next year. Get on it now when you can. So you're going to want to sign into an account. And if you don't have an account, possibly consider creating one. I don't know, Colonel Desimoy, do you have an account or not? I'm sure I do. The question is whether I remember my login, and that's definitely no. Okay. Let me see then. Let me see if I can share mine. Let's see. Let me get there real quick. Yeah, one thing I'll add to that, like you said, there's different scholarship windows. They're a little different than academic scholarships, which usually are open through the end of the spring and then are active for the next fall semester or quarter. Aviation scholarships are different, that their deadlines are varied throughout the year. So right now is a good time for scholarships in general. A lot of them close around the new year, but there are scholarships that close all throughout the year. So definitely always be looking. Those of you who are either in or close to college are probably used to looking for college scholarships. These are very similar, except they're going year round. So always be on the lookout for those. And some of the ones that aren't on the normal scholarship schedule are a little less competitive because people aren't looking for them at those times. So definitely be looking out for those ones. And we had a question last time about how competitive these are. And the ones that Colonel Soma was about to talk about, the EAA and the AOPA, those are going to be very competitive just because they're very well-known organizations and they're very high-dollar scholarships. So everyone's going to want them. There's going to be a lot of applicants, a lot of very good applicants. So don't let that keep you from applying, but keep that in mind and look for other scholarships that might be lesser known. That's where I've had the most luck, is with some offbeat scholarships that I've actually gotten some pretty good rewards from. So keep that in mind when you're doing all this. All right, thank you. I can go ahead and share my screen, Colonel Desimoy. Okay, I will stop that then. All right, let me go ahead and share real quick. All right, so if you go to the EAA scholarships, you're going to click on apply now, just like Colonel Desimoy was previously doing. And once you've made an account, you all should definitely make one. But once you've made an account, you're going to have to create a profile. As you can see from mine's already completed. But it's just answering some basic questions about yourself. And with want to be as competitive or informative as possible to make yourself competitive and a standout applicant because they're going to be looking at your profile as well as your application. So as you can see down here, just from previous things, I've had well, that's interesting. That's it. Okay, last year. So this time last year, I was creating a scholarship application for the EAA. But what we're going to do is if you're going to click on add another, this is going to help you open for another scholarship that you want to apply for. And then you're going to click on open for a post-secondary application.
And it says there are 78 days remaining to submit this. It looks like it's saying to submit a scholarship. So we'll look into that, but it may be open for next year. Not 100% sure on that, but definitely take a look at that. So here asks if you're an EAA member or if you're a member of the EAA chapter. I am a member of the EAA, so we'll go ahead and select yes and no on that. And you'll have to insert your EAA number. So I'd recommend that you all become EAA members. I believe if you're under 18, it's free. So definitely consider that. And then here it asks you to list some things about yourself, how many hours you serve, volunteer per month. And I definitely try to be honest, but be as generous with your hours as possible. So if you're on, definitely be honest, but the more hours you have, the better and more competitive you look. So be honest, but keep that in mind. And then your clubs that you're part of, list how many you are in as well there. They want to see when you're applying for scholarships, they want to see that you're a well-rounded applicant who actively participates in a lot of things, and you're not just here to get a scholarship and then disappear again and do whatever you want. So making sure that you list that you're active will be important. And then selecting some of these questions. Do you intend to pursue an aviation related career? Some scholarships like to see this, and then some it doesn't matter as much. But I assume that because most of you here, you're interested in pursuing an aviation related career, or maybe you just want to get some experience with it. But chances are if you're applying for a scholarship, you are kind of interested. So I'd recommend putting yes for that, because when you get a whole bunch of applications, the people who aren't interested in pursuing a career may not be as competitive as those who are. So keep that in
Colonel
mind.
Soma?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
One comment on that is this isn't asking like if you're 100% sure that you're going to be in aviation as a career. This is simply asking if you're interested. So don't at all be afraid to say yes if you're slightly interested. They just want to gauge where your interests are and what you want. It's not at all any type of commitment to be in a career. So don't be afraid to click yes on things like that.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir, for adding that. And then it asks for a cumulative GPA. So again, if you don't think you have a good GPA, put it as is. And because there's going to be people in your shoes as well, I guarantee it. So definitely put what your GPA is. They're looking again for well-rounded and hardworking individuals, but just because you have a low GPA doesn't mean you're not hardworking. So keep that in mind. And then there's some additional questions here. And then some information asking if you've had any previous flight training. And then what you're going to have here is some essays you're going to write. So why are you the best candidate to receive this award? In the next year or two, what do you hope to gain from receiving this award? And et cetera. And there's a couple other questions. But I would definitely recommend having a couple people proofread your essays, not only for information that you have listed, but for context. You only have 250 words max, but when I was writing essays for scholarships that I wanted, or even for applying for schools, you usually end up with 1,000 words, 500 words or so, and you have to trim it all the way back to 250 words. And it's pretty hard, but you want to make sure that your application that you're filling in here is unique and something that other people aren't going to say. So someone else is going to say, I'm the best candidate for this award because I wanted to fly ever since I can remember. And my dad was in the Air Force. And that was pretty cool. So I wanted to just do what he did. That sounds like something you would want to do, but there's not anything super special about that. So you want to have something inspiring and motivational that's inspiring you to do this. So you could say the same thing, maybe about your dad being in the Air Force, but you could say, my dad serving his country as a pilot, it really inspired me to pursue this because I want to follow in his footsteps and not only do as he did, but be a motivational leader that leads future airmen in defending our country and things like that. And that's a pretty meh example, but definitely work on making sure it's as standout as possible. Next, for what most of you may have seen or know about the most, we're going to go to the Civil Air Patrol flight scholarship. So just type in Civil Air Patrol flight scholarships. Oh wait, before I do this, are there any questions on what I just talked about?
Colonel Summers, Colonel Maxwell.
Yes, go ahead, ma'am.
I just noticed when you went by one of those questions, it said like for EAA, have you had an EAA Young Eagles flight? That's the kind of stuff that they're saying, okay, this person at 12 or 13 years old wanted to learn how to fly. It's showing kind of a interest that's long-term. And I think that's probably what they're also looking for, not just somebody that wants to jump in and get some money to fly for this year, but not do it again. And I think they also, on those questions, it was very clear. They want to see that you have a plan in place for, next year, 5 years from now, and it was saying 10 years from now. So go ahead and get that worked out. And because once you do it once, a lot of these scholarships are going to be the same, ask the same information.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely keep
real
that
quick
in mind.
with that.
Go ahead, Colonel.
That brings up a really good thing. When you're writing these essays, even if they're 150 to 250 words, do not write them in the application box. Open a Word document or a Google Doc or whatever you want to use. Write it in some word processor. So one, that you can save it and use it for future scholarships, because a lot of scholarships ask very similar questions that you can make minor edits and submit it without having to write a whole new essay. But also, if you have your computer crash like Colonel Soma did just a minute ago, or someone bumps the browser and refreshes it, your essay's gone. And I know I've had that happen. I'm sure Colonel Soma has had that happen. It's really frustrating to have to redo your whole work. So I highly recommend you do it in a word processor. And when it's done and edited and you're happy with it, copy it, paste it into the box, and then submit it.
Yes, definitely on that. And going back to what Colonel Maxwell said as well, you don't want to make it seem like you're just here to go in, get your scholarship, and then go out. It helps that a lot of you or all of you are in Civil Air Patrol and actively participating in aviation, but definitely continuing afterward. They want to see a plan that you have goals, because if you're just here to fly, that doesn't really say much. And then their money might be just used for someone who's going to get 30 hours of flight time and then never actually finish and pursue their license. Like we've seen in the past with some people who get these scholarships, they go through for a little bit and then just stop. And that's not only an inconvenience for yourself because you've wasted all this knowledge on nothing, but also to the people who may be working with you. So for example, if you're working not only with a flight school, but you might have a Civil Air Patrol instructor, if you go into training and then just stop, then they've wasted all their volunteer time on you, and you don't want to pursue anything. So keep that in mind, that you want to have a plan, but you also got to be considerate of the people giving these scholarships and other people that you're working with. So keep that in mind. But specifically here on Civil Air Patrol's flight scholarships page, you can see that there's a couple. There's the Mary Fike flight scholarship. Then there's a couple more, I think a total of 5 here listed. But don't be afraid to apply for all of these. We're going to talk about later, but there are some things we recommend with female and male applications. Where usually, if a scholarship says only meant for female cadets or female applicants, that even if you're a male, go ahead and apply it for anyway, because there might not be enough female cadet to apply for it. But in the case of here at Civil Air Patrol for a Civil Air Patrol scholarship, I'm not going to recommend that just because of what it's set up as. But we'll talk about that later in some other specific scholarships. So all of the applications are pretty similar. The only difference is some of the requirements that are listed. So some, for example, the Lieutenant Colonel William E. Hanna Junior Memorial Flight Scholarship. It says you have to have a 3rd class medical certificate and a valid student pilot certificate. And if you're going to be flying any type of powered aircraft, those are 2 things you need already. But usually, if you're doing through a Civil Air Patrol flight school, or Civil Air Patrol Flight Academy, if you're going to that first, you're going to need to get this stuff beforehand before going. And they'll help you with that. But in the case of Colonel Desimoni, who didn't go through a flight school or didn't go through a Civil Air Patrol Flight Academy, they help you get this as well on your first flight lesson. They'll get you your student pilot certificate and other things like this. But definitely keep that in mind, as it's pretty important. And you should definitely start applying. Try to get your if you're seriously interested in having a flight career, consider getting your third class medical. There's a lot of information on it. If you search up how to schedule appointments and things like that, you have to go to an aviation medic, I'm pretty sure. Colonel Desmond, do you have any information on that?
Yeah, so to get your any class of medical, you'll need to go to the FAA website and search for a DME, which is a designated medical examiner. It's basically just a general practitioner, general doctor that's been approved by the FAA to give flight physicals. The third class is very simple. It's eyes, ears, and then just a general check on your health, just to make sure you don't have any major underlying conditions that could cause issues with flight, any like heart issues, things like that. But yeah, it's just on the FAA website. It's easy to Google that. And then again, if you start with a flight school right away, they'll help you get that. You don't need it right away. You just need it before you get your license. So that's definitely something your flight school can help you with, or your flight academy if you go through the Civil Air Patrol route.
Absolutely. And important thing for most of these scholarships is that you don't need these things while you're applying, but you do need them to claim your scholarship. So keep that in mind. So if you don't have it right now, go ahead and apply now to get ahead of that, but start working on those other things as well. So if you go to application procedures, if you just click on those, it surprised me when I first was looking this a couple months ago about how simple it is. But it just lists some basic deadlines. You have to be a current cadet through 31st of December 2021, and that's actually when most of these scholarships, the Washington Wing scholarships, are going to close. They're going to be closing around the 31st of December at 1200 Central Time. So keep that in mind. You have a couple months, but I wouldn't wait till the last week or last day because you're going to be at the bottom of the list, which means you're not going to be super competitive. So keep that in mind. But there's a lot of some of the eligibility. For example, here it says you cannot have been a previous recipient for the scholarship or program for which you're applying. So keep that in mind, where if you apply for these once, you may not be able to apply for them again. So get the max out of them that you can. Use every bit of every bit of money that they give you, because aviation is not cheap and it's hard to pay on your own. So definitely take make full use of that. And then it's going to give you what you need to do here for how to apply. So you're going to log into eServices. It's all updated to the new website that eServices has set up. So you're going to want to go follow these instructions. And then you're going to fill out the first 5 sections, which are going to be looking like questionnaires mostly for who you are and what you want and your goals. Again, like we've seen, all these applications are very, very similar for flight scholarships. And then you're going to be uploading your resume. And biggest thing with your resume is that you're going to want to talk about who you are, but don't clutter it with things that don't need to be on there that aren't going to contribute to what you want. With a resume, typically you hear all the time where, oh, they only read it for 2 to 3 minutes, and they just kind of scan it. And honestly, from experience, I can say that's true. You only look at usually at the top things that they have listed on top, or leadership positions that you have listed. So I wouldn't go cluttering it up with a whole bunch of extra information. Don't try to elaborate too much on everything, but unless it's something that needs clarification, that might not be a popular thing. So like, for example, cadet NCO of the year for Washington Wing, you might talk about how many cadets were in the wing at that time and why this scholarship was special, or the award was special in that scenario. But definitely keep your most current things at the top, but have a lot of people proofread it. Have people in your squadron, some adults, and other people. And don't be afraid to share that, because a solid resume could be the make it or break it situation here while you're applying for these. So keep that all in mind. And then there's some notes that they list here, but it's super explanatory and you shouldn't have a problem with it. But if you do, reach out to people, ask for help. But the application process for Civil Air Patrol is one of the best I've ever seen. So keep that in mind. And then lastly, before I move on, are there any questions? Okay.
Let's take a quick 5-minute break. We're about the halfway point, so
will do.
Let's take a quick. We'll reconvene at 10:21.
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right.
All right, quick stretch break. Thanks. I will pause the recording.
I've gotten a couple good questions. I want to address those really quickly. Let's see here. Make sure I read it properly. Someone asked about the lesser known scholarships, and I'll be covering that in just a minute. But then I got a good question about the flight plan, which is required for the CAP scholarships. It's pretty unique. I haven't seen it on any other scholarships. So I'll talk about that really briefly. What it is basically, they call it a flight plan. It's really just a short bio on what your goals are for your flight training. So I applied for some CAP scholarships back in, I think, 2018. And I got one. And I just looked at my flight plan because of this question, and it's not very good. But I'll share it with you guys just to see kind of what it should look like. I guess it worked good enough, so I'll show you guys. Let's see here. All right, you guys should be able to see this now. So it's really short. It's not no flowery language or anything like that. It's your name, what it is, and then talking about what you plan to do with the money if they choose to give it to you. Again, I wrote this a long time ago, and I'm seeing a bunch of grammatical errors that are driving me crazy. So try not to focus on those, but focus on just the overall part of it that shows what you're covering. So I'm covering, first off, what I'm going to use it for, where I'm going to be doing my flight training, what I've done in the past to show that I'm going to follow through with this. Ironically, my plans changed and I didn't end up doing it this way, but I ended up doing it just a different way. I still did it though. And then a little bit of my reasoning behind wanting the money. And anytime in any application, anytime they give you the chance to write something, you want to work in how you've been dedicated to doing this. Whether you have flight training or not, you can show your dedication through stuff you've done at Civil Air Patrol, stuff you've done with other organizations. But they're looking for people who are, one, going to use the money efficiently and properly, and also that are going to give back into the community, especially with the organizations like the EAA and the AOPA that Colonel Soma will talk about in a minute. Their money is an investment, so they don't want to see you just go get your license. Okay, great, I have a pilot's license. Check that box, and then go live the rest of your life however you're going to. They want to see that the money they're giving is going to inspire you to give back to other people. They don't necessarily want your money back or any actual return on their monetary investment, but they want to see that you're going to give back into the aviation community and help other people further themselves. So that's something you always want to work into your flight plans, your essays, your bios, anything you can do like that. And you want to also try to avoid saying that. You want to demonstrate it. And like how I did that here is showing that I got my pilot's license on my 17th birthday, and that I had been training right after that. That's how I tried to show that in this. So try to work that in when you can. Let's see. Those are the questions I wanted to cover. Does anybody have any more on these scholarships before we go on? I have a couple scholarships I'm going to go over. They're a little lesser known, and how to find scholarships. That's the big part. Okay. I guess I'll share my other screen. I'll kind of talk. Actually, just kidding. Colonel Soma has one more scholarship to go over, and then I'll go into how to find scholarships. Colonel Soma, go ahead.
Sweet, thank you. Okay, so real quick, just for the sake of time, one of the last scholarships I want to talk about is the AOPA scholarship. So if you Google AOPA flight scholarships, you're gonna get this page. And if you haven't become a member, this is again one of the ones that's free if you're under 18. But definitely create a membership. You don't have to join anything because you have to pay money, but I definitely create an account. And it's not necessary to apply for these scholarships, but again, anything could help. You don't know. Maybe they check if you're a member or not, because that might show that you're here and you're here to get the scholarship, but you're also not just going to get the minimum to do it. You're going to become a member, you're going to make an account, and you're going to be good there. So here's a couple of the industry scholarships, and then they show regional and scholarship updates. So this is their main page right here. And if you go through the list here, See, there's the Air Force Association. You have Aviation, Education, Career Expo scholarships, Women in Aviation, National Air Transportation Association. So there's a lot of them, and there's EA even listed. This is the one we talked about before, so kind of disregard this one. But there's a lot of scholarships here, and like I kind of was saying before, if there's like this is an example of if there's a scholarship that's stated as being only for women, apply for it anyway. Because what might happen a lot of times is there's not enough women who apply for these. So they just have extra money sitting around. And if you've applied for it, then they might just give it to you. There's a lot of examples of people doing that. Colonel Desmoy has met some people like that. So it does happen. So don't let it hold you back in that situation. But I'll just click on one of these real quick and show you you'll see if you click on it. So this is the National Air Transportation Association. And here's the basic requirements. Be a senior in high school, planning a career in general aviation field. So right off the bat, there's some pretty tight requirements. And AOPA is a pretty popular flight scholarship. So I would say if you're not a senior in high school, still apply for it, but keep that in mind that you may not get it. And then you submit a letter of acceptance from a college or university. So you have to, again, be accepted from college. So a lot goes into it, but you'll get about $2,500, what they say. That's about a quarter of your flight training, which is a lot to get you started. You'll probably be able to solo and a lot of other things, but it's another example of don't just apply for one scholarship. And then if you go to submit application, here's your entire application process. So your information, then you're going to go to education information on this next page here. Okay, well, I have to fill it out, but basically you're going to see there's education information, flight training information. So that might be information about the flight schools that you want to attend. And then activities, awards and honors, and verification. And actually this scholarship right here in specific is actually for college tuition for like an aviation kind of related school. But this is an example of the scholarship, and a lot of other scholarships on the AOPA site that I listed here are specific to flight. So keep that in mind. But with that, we'll switch. Are there any questions before I switch over to Colonel Desmoni? All right, sweet. Colonel Desmond, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and with that, you'll notice on that AOPA page, there were a lot of scholarships from other organizations that you had seen, like you saw the EAA one, there was the 99s, the Women in Aviation International, and those are actually like partnership scholarships. So you'll see on, if you went to, for example, the Women in Aviation International, you would see an AOPA scholarship. That's the same scholarship. There's just two organizations that have partnered to fund that. So some of them will have separate applications. You can apply on each site, but it's going to go to the same people. So they'll just say your name twice. There's not a whole lot of benefit in that. So maybe just double check that you're not applying for the same scholarship, just simply because it's a waste of your effort, not because it's pointless or anything.
Colonel Desmoni?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything that ever tells you how many of those scholarships they give out? Is it all those just one scholarship for each of those entries, or do they give out 5 of those? Or
yeah, it depends on the scholarship. A lot of those ones are pretty high dollar, so they're going to be one award scholarships. But there are some that'll have multiple. Generally, they're going to advertise that on somewhere on their site if they have more than one, because that's going to help them get more applicants.
Okay.
There was one, unfortunately, it's closed as of 4 days ago, but they had 6 $10,000 awards, and it was limited to only Pacific Northwest residents, so Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana. And that was a really cool opportunity. Unfortunately, I missed the application to apply myself, but next year, keep that in mind. There's one through.
What's the name of it?
It was something different. I remember that. It was something about Pacific Northwest Aviation Scholarship.
Okay.
But it's on the Women in Aviation International site, which I'll show you in a minute. Yeah, and definitely feel free to write down all these sites that I'm about to show you. These are sites that'll help you find scholarships. And then I'll walk you through a basic application just to show you what that might look like. So let's share that screen. There we go. So we are on the EAA. Don't want that anymore. So we will get rid of that. So one thing to do, first place to start, go to Google, aviation scholarships. Keep in mind, this is going to give you, just like the one that Colonel Soma just showed, it's going to give you flight training scholarships as well as aviation academic scholarships for college, which I'm sure some of you are at the end of your high school, maybe even starting college. So that will be helpful for you too. We're going to focus on the flight training scholarships for today. So you could also replace aviation with flight training or private pilot scholarships, anything like that that might help you get a better result. One of the results here is a really creatively named website, scholarships.com. You can search categories, do flight training or aviation scholarships. You're gonna have to read through the overviews. There's a lot of these, like this one, you have to be a pilot already, so that wouldn't apply for most of you. A lot of these are this is for higher education, so college related in aviation. But down here, the Leroy W. Homer Scholarship, I'll look at that in a minute. That's for flight training. The Aviation Explorer one isn't very clear, but it seems like you could use it for flight training. This one's really cool. First off, it's $10,000, which is a very high award. And it doesn't really specify what you have to use it for. It's really broad and it just wants anybody exploring aviation. It sounds like you could use this for college tuition. You could use this for flight training, pretty much anything that they think would be you exploring your future in aviation. And then the Richard L. Taylor Flight Training Scholarship. Some of them are obvious in the title. Some of them you have to do a little more digging. So this is a great website to go through. It's really nice. It gives you the application deadlines. You know which ones to prioritize. It usually tells the amount. Some, like the Homer Scholarship, vary from year to year, just depending on their donations. Highly recommend scholarships.com and Google. From there, though, another response from Google is FAA.gov. This is also a good website. They give you just a list, about a dozen here, a little more. Some of these, again, are tuition. Some of these are flight training, and some of them are completely unrelated to what most of us are interested in, because there's airline dispatchers, which is actually really interesting, but it doesn't sound like many of you have that in your goals. Air Traffic Controllers Association. Again, that's not for pilots. That's going to be for people who wanting to go into air traffic control. But we'll look at some of these real quick. The Aero Club of New England has a cool scholarship. We'll just open it up. Keep in mind, whenever you're at a .gov, you click on a link, it's going to ask you if you're sure you want to leave. All of these links, except for one, I will tell you are safe. One, I would recommend you stay away from, and I'll show you that in a minute. So this is a little bit of an old-fashioned scholarship page. It's kind of not as easy to read. There's a lot of words and you don't know where to look, but you can look here and talk about what it's about, why they want to give you money, talk about their history, the timeline of the scholarship, and then how they get their money. Generally, these are going to be either by donors, by a group of donors, or by one person who has died and set up a memorial fund to fund these scholarships. The thing about those ones that are memorial scholarships is a lot of times if people don't continue to donate, they'll eventually run dry. And unfortunately, one of the ones that I received last year has done that, because I tried to show you guys, but the links are no longer available. So it looks like they've run out of money, unfortunately. But these ones are pretty basic. I'll show you some other ones real quick. The link that I would stay away from is avscholars.com. It used to be really interesting and really helpful, but I went to it a couple days ago and today, and it seems like someone else has taken over, and it looks kind of sketchy, like there might be some viruses there. So I would stay away from that unless you really know what you're doing with computer things, and I don't, so I'm gonna stay away from it. What I'll talk about is the Leroy W. Homer Jr. Scholarship. This is one of those memorial scholarships that I talked about. This was a passenger on United Airlines Flight 93, which was the flight that crashed into the field in Pennsylvania on 9/11/2000. So this scholarship has been going strong for 19 years now. But this is, in my mind, a better scholarship page. It tells you the frequently asked questions, what you have to do to be eligible, be a citizen, your age requirements, all that. It tells you how to apply. And And if we go up here to scholarships, we can click application. That's not what I wanted. Application. There we go. And then it says it's now open, which is awesome. So I recommend you all go apply for this one. It's a good scholarship, usually for a decent amount of money. We'll click apply. I'll kind of show you what this looks like. This is a really well put together online scholarship. Some of them still have you print out a form, fill it out with a pen, scan it, and email it in. Some actually require you to mail it, like with an actual stamp, which is really old fashioned, but a lot of these people that put these scholarships together are really old. So they are really old fashioned. That's just part of
But they have money.
That's right. They have money, so we'll deal with it. So this one's age 16 to 23. So it sounds like that's most of you on here. A couple of you might have a year or two to go. It'd be a U.S. citizen, which again, I assume is most of you. You can't have been charged or convicted with any misdemeanors or felonies, which I hope is most of you. And you have to read, write, and speak English to FAA standards. So let's look at what this looks like. We'll click begin. Takes a minute to load. There we go. Okay, so I started this earlier. So you can see my name, my email, my telephone number, and as of today, am I 18 years or older? Yes. I'll click resume. So here's the info. It's going to ask you all this. It'll ask my title. This is really general info. We'll go next step. Hopefully, we'll go to the next step. Maybe it won't. Click on step 2. Okay, here's just a list of instructions. This is very standard. They're gonna tell you what you have to do to be eligible. That way, if they don't give you the scholarship, there's no questions about why you didn't get it. And then any other info that they want you to have, you'll sign your initials. The next step, and this is where you get into more eligibility questions. They want to actually make sure that you actually are these things and you didn't just skim it and type your name, like terms and conditions of everything else that you've ever done. So we'll say yes, yes, no, and yes. Make sure you don't just go down and click yes to all of them or no to all of them based on the first two, because sometimes they'll switch it up, like have you been convicted of a felony? And then you just click yes to all of them. You don't really want that. Yeah, and then it's just going to go through all this other information. I'm not going to fill this all out because that's really boring. But this is what an online application looks like. So keep that. They're usually very simple if they do this online program. If not, it can be a little more time intensive. This one is, I'm going to go through really quick. These scholarships are the ones that have unfortunately closed for this year. But this is an organization I highly recommend you get a membership in. They have a discount for students. I think it's like $20 for a year, which is really good considering you get thousands of dollars of scholarships from here. But this is their scholarship page. You're going to go here, click flight training. Normally it would load and have a bunch of scholarships here, but since they've closed, they've removed them. So you don't get all excited and then realize you can't apply. So those are the main sites that I recommend: Women in Aviation International, FAA.gov, and scholarships.com for finding scholarships. And then of course, Google. Does anybody have any questions on those? Okay, and a comment on the questions. If you've sent any private messages to Colonel Soma, I don't know if he's able to receive those right now. So if you haven't had your question answered, that's probably why. So feel free to send it to the general chat or to myself, and I'll try to answer those for you.
I haven't gotten any, but just in case anyone has.
Okay. And then, yeah, Colonel Soma, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, sweet, thank you. So what we're going to kind of transition into now is we've talked about scholarships for all of you, and we're going to go into flight schools, specifically in Washington for the most part. So I'm going to start with sending a link to the chat real quick. It's going to have all the flight schools in Washington that Colonel Desimoni and I have looked into and kind of thought we'd like. So let me share it, send it to everyone real quick. Oops, that's not right. So this will bring you to a Google Doc, and you all should have access. Let me know if someone doesn't have access, and we can try to fix that. But basically, what you're going to see here is a list of Washington Wing flight schools that you can use, and this is specific to Washington. But if you're ever needing to find a scholarship in your area, I'd recommend starting with Googling it, because Google has a lot of great options. And just Google flight schools near you, and you can usually find that information that you need. And once you found a flight school that you think you might be interested in, go ahead and do research on it. Because if you do research, it will keep you from having to do what Colonel Desimoni did, which is he found a flight school and it didn't end up working out for him because of a certain amount of reasons, which we'll talk about later and what to look out for. But if you do your research ahead of time, you should be good to go with that. So switching flight schools isn't the worst thing. I've done it before, just from going from Bellingham to Oregon, but it can be a little bit more difficult to transfer a scholarship, and it takes some effort. So keep that in mind. And then there's also there's a lot of civil air patrol pilots in Washington Wing, and I'm sure in Oregon and Tennessee, wherever you're from, that would maybe be able to help you with your flight training. But this goes back to before, you want to be courteous of their time and their effort that they're putting into you. But usually flying with a cap aircraft and civil air patrol instructor is going to be cheaper than a flight school for a couple of reasons. But that is an option. So potentially ask your squadron commander or people at your squadron if there's any civil air patrol instructors nearby that could potentially help with your training, because that could be a very cheap alternative. That would be good. But a flight school definitely works a lot as well. So Colonel Desimoni is going to talk about some of the things you need to look out for specifically in a flight school. So go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so like he said, I've had experience with having a flight school that didn't work for myself. And that was not necessarily the flight school was bad, but they just didn't happen to work for my situation. So that's also, a flight school might have great reviews and might be a good flight school. It just might not work for you. That doesn't mean either of you are at fault. It just might not be meant to work out. So keep that in mind. And like you said, it's not the worst thing to switch flight schools, but it does create a little bit of difficulty and add some time to your training. So we want to try to avoid it. But again, it's not the end of the world if it does happen. So things you want to look for is the flight instructor experience. A lot of time at flight schools, you get a lot of very low time instructors being new instructors. And this isn't to say they're not qualified at all. Generally, they're decent instructors after they got certified by the FAA and they got hired. So you're usually going to get a good instructor. The trouble is that they're not always committed to stay, because generally what they're there for is to earn their hours so they can get enough to go get hired by an airline. And once they get the 1,500 hours that they need, some are very good, just good people, and they'll commit to stay to their students that they have right now. And then once they finish off getting their students through their licenses, then they'll leave. Others don't have that nice sense of ethics, and they'll just, as soon as they hit that 1,500 mark, they'll be gone, which is great for them because they're getting paid a lot more at the airlines, but it's not as good for you because now you're stuck having to get a new instructor halfway or most of the way through your training. So keep that in mind. And that's going to change flight instructor to flight instructor, not necessarily school to school. So when you get set up with a flight instructor, just I'd recommend having a sit down meeting with them and just kind of getting a feel for, one, if they're going to be there for at least as long as you're going to be there, and if your personalities work well together. Because some people just don't get along naturally. That's just part of life. But you want to make sure the person that's teaching you how to fly, you can at least tolerate enough to be in the airplane with them. Preferably you get along and can have a good time, because flight training really is fun when you have a good instructor that you can get along with, joke around a little bit. flight training is a lot easier when it's lighthearted. You can make jokes here and there and have fun and not, it won't seem as much of a chore. So flight instructor experience, aircraft maintenance. I'm assuming not many of you are licensed mechanics, so you might not know as much about aircraft maintenance, but that's okay. Just take a look at the aircraft, make sure they don't look like they're falling apart. And this takes more than just looking at the paint. The flight school that I ended up learning at didn't have the prettiest airplanes. They're from the mid 80s. And so the flight school that I left had them all from the 2010s. Their oldest one, I think, was like 2003. The flight planes that I used to get my license were from the 80s, had flaking paint, didn't look too pretty, but they were well kept. Take a look at their scheduling and see how busy they are. If they've got a packed schedule with all their airplanes are always full, all their instructors are always busy, you're going to have trouble scheduling as many flights as you might want. I usually recommend people fly 2 times a week, 3 if they can afford it and it fits in their schedule. And that'll just get you through your training quicker by a calendar point of view and by an hour point of view because you're just going to be flying more and it'll be just beat into you better because you're doing it more often. I'd also look at pricing. If you only have one school around you, there's not a whole lot you can do. But if you have multiple airports near you or multiple flight schools on one field, compare their pricing to one another, give them a call, ask them what they usually estimate a private pilot license will take, and just look at their hourly rates and compare them dollar to dollar. I'm not saying you want to necessarily go with the cheapest one right off the bat, but definitely take that into consideration. If there's one that has the same reviews as the other one and it's cheaper, I would go with the cheaper option. That's, of course, less of a concern if you have a full scholarship, such as a wing scholarship. But if you have a finite, you have a $2,000 scholarship, I would go somewhere where that's going to get you farther. And then, like Colonel Soma said, look at the reviews. There'll be some online reviews, but with flight schools, that's not as reliable. What you're really going to want to look at is just word of mouth. Talk to people you know in the industry. Myself and Colonel Soma are great resources for this. So if you come across a school that you're not sure about, send us an email and ask us if we know anything about it. I know a lot of people across the state and even just across the country that are involved with flight schools. So I can give you I'll let you know if I've heard anything good, bad, or neutral about that flight school. So use us as a resource for that. And anybody else you might know that's either a flight instructor or a pilot that's gone through a flight school, ask them. People are your best resource in this situation. Actually, in most situations. Yeah, if you can't find a flight school or you don't know how to go about it, first off, I would say Google flight school, your city or your area. But again, reach out to us. We're willing to help you. We're not going to do the work for you, but we'll help you out. And then again, like you said, ask your squadron if they have any CAP pilots and CAP aircraft that you could use. That's a lot cheaper. That brings us to the end of our content. So we'll take the last 10 minutes to answer any questions you guys have. It can be specifically about something that we mentioned or something that we didn't mention. Any questions you guys have?
This is Colonel Maxwell. My question is does the Cadet Invest, when does it close? I know it's open now, but when does it close?
Colonel Soma, do you have that? I believe it's December 31st.
Yeah, the scholarships, all Civil Air Patrol scholarships will be closing from what I've looked at on the 31st of December.
So those scholarships are all good for the flight academies anywhere in the country. I mean, you can put in to go actually even on National Cadet Special Activities, which aren't even listed yet, like you're saying. Even if you're going to the, say, the one that does aircraft maintenance type activity, or even any of the activities, it's my understanding that you can use those in Cadet Invest scholarships for those travel and for the cost of the activity itself.
Yeah, and the cool thing about the CAP scholarships, we forgot to mention, scholarships usually do their money one of two ways. One, they'll send you a check and trust you to use it wisely, and they might ask for some pictures or some type of proof that you've used it for flight training. Others, like Cadet Wings, will do it through your flight school. So you have to tell them who your flight school is. They'll send them the money, or they'll set up a billing system with them. CAP Cadet Invest is really cool. They just send you a check. So I got a scholarship a couple years ago. It was an academic scholarship. They just sent me a check for the amount. I gave it to my school, said put it on my student account, and then that went towards my balance. That is nice. It's a lot simpler. There's no bureaucracy going back and forth trying to get people communicating. They send you a check in the mail. You hand it to the people who need the money, and it's over with. So that's a really nice thing about Cadet Invest. What other questions are there?
On the CAP scholarship application, there was a question about what college you're expected to attend, and it's a required question. What do we say if we are not sure yet?
I would just put your top pick. Again, this is not something that like it's final or anything. They just want to know that you are looking at colleges, maybe that you've applied, that you're at least thinking about it. So I just put your top picks school. If you don't have one, just pick one of the ones that you're interested in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they'll definitely finalize anything before they send money anywhere. So
And again, as somebody who gets to be a pretty major part of the selection for Desert Eagle Flight Academy, it is important. It does matter that you're amongst the first to apply versus the last to apply. It just tells us where your priorities are. It does matter, you know, that you I've had done your orientation flights, or at least gotten some. You know, we've had people show up for Glider Academy who've never been in a glider before, and it's like, oh, I don't like this. Well, too bad you're here. But no, it wasn't that bad. But you want to make sure that the people do know what they're getting into and they will enjoy it.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely a big part in all your application. Just any way you can, even if you haven't done an O-Ride or you haven't done a whole lot, just show that you're interested and that you're invested and that you're not going to back out at the last minute. Because the last thing they want to do is give someone money that's not going to use it, because they could have given it to someone that would have really benefited from it. And all these scholarships, that's all they want to do, is they just want to benefit the most amount of people, and that the best they can. So that's why they want to see those things. Like Colonel Maxwell said, that you apply early. You're still eligible, of course, if you apply anytime before the deadline. But it does look good to see, like, wow, they applied 20 minutes after it opened. They must really want this. So it shows that initiative, and that's important. What other questions we got? We got 7 minutes left.
I also think on Civil Air Patrol wise, I know for us, 95% of our people we selected would have had our encampment as their first choice. In other ways, we would take somebody that had their second or third, is possibly if they were going to cadet officer school, you know, something to get them ahead, or if they had put all their other choices or also flight academies. That's telling us that they really are focused on flying. Again, we at Desert Eagle, we are really focused on people's accomplishments. We want solos, we want FAA tests accomplished. It's not a come and spend the evenings out playing around. No, you're going to be full speed aviation the whole time.
Yeah, definitely. Any other questions about things we might have missed that you were hoping to get answered during this class, or any confusion that we might have caused? Hopefully not too much.
In terms of setting up, in terms of flying with a CAP aircraft instructor, would it be as simple as just going up to someone in your squadron who you know is an instructor and setting up with a time with them, or is there a process to it?
Yeah, it's definitely that easy. You find a CAP instructor who's qualified to be teaching in Civil Air Patrol aircraft, and just ask them if they're willing to work you through your private pilot license. Make sure, don't just ask them like, hey, would you be willing to give me a lesson? Make sure you're upfront about what you're looking for. And if they are, they'll know how to go through and start getting you through that. But it is very simple from your part. The first step for you would be finding that instructor and making sure that they're willing to do that, and that both of you have the time commitment, and that your schedules are at least going to roughly line up to make sure like they don't work nights and sleep all day while you don't have class and you're never going to have time to fly. So that's going to be an important part to look at.
All right, thank you, sir.
Welcome.
We're also very lucky in Washington Wing that we've received our third 172, is my understanding. So we do have aircraft available that are good for training in.
Yes, and that's another thing. We are going to need a 172. I don't know many, if any, CAP pilots that are going to want to do primary training, being private pilot training in a 182, just because it's a lot heavier, more powerful aircraft. It's more advanced. So you're going to need to find a 172. But there's things that we can move around. So just because there's not a 172 at your airport, don't let that discourage you from finding an instructor, because there's things we can work out, but just find the instructor first and we'll work on the rest of the stuff. And if you run into any issues with either aircraft scheduling or finding an instructor, email me. That's part of my job at Wing. So just let me know and I can help you out with that. What other questions?
Civil Air Patrol CFI, and you're going to use your squadron aircraft. They would expect you to pay for avgas and chip in for maintenance, right?
Yeah, so there's an hourly fee on the aircraft. It's very much lower than a rental would be from a flight school, but there is a cost, and it's set by CAP, not by the instructor. But the major benefit from going through CAP is, one, that lower cost, and the instructors aren't going to charge you for their time, which normally at a flight school that would cost anywhere from $70 to $100 an hour, and you're going to need about 40 to 60 hours of training. So that definitely adds up. So that's the major benefit. So it's not free, but it's vastly cheaper than a flight school.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Probably got time for probably one or two more questions if we've got any more.
All right. Thank you, Colonel Desmoni, Colonel Soma.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Really do. I'm going to fire off a really quick poll, really brief poll for everyone to fill out. It's a click and go. I'm also going to share my email in the chat. So if you have any feedback for us, please send me an email with any details. The poll is not very, doesn't allow free text. So if you would, please fill out the poll. And while you're doing that, I want to thank everyone for attending. And again, reach out for some feedback. This is our very, very first virtual WAMA class. And I think the instructors did an outstanding job. We have more classes later today, and we look to repeat this every month until we're able to do our in-person training in Ephrata. And even then, we're considering doing a hybrid and continuing using this format. As Colonel Maxwell mentioned earlier in the, the broadcast, that with the snows, we would very likely have canceled this weekend's WAMA because of the safety factor of getting over the mountain passes in cap vans and things like that. So we appreciate all your feedback and your participation. All right. I think
If I could
have
add
got-
one thing before everyone goes, for the Washington All Mission Academy social media, could I have everybody smile, look at the camera, and then hold like a thumbs up? Okay, give me a second. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I missed it.
Here, I can do it again, sir, if you would like.
Okay. Yay.
Okay. Okay, ready?
Please.
Okay, there. Okay, thank you all for doing that.
With no further ado, thanks everyone. If you're going to join us at the next class, you're welcome. Get some lunch and get some rested. Or for those of you in Tennessee, a snack. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Poll looks good.
It did. It did. I still think I'm gonna maybe not for this round, but I'm gonna explore SurveyMonkey to send something out post to allow some free text and things like that. But in the interim, we'll use the email. Oh, I got to turn off the recording.